Today, we're going to unpack a story that starts with something incredibly simple, a pickle. But trust me, it ends up revealing a huge truth about what really separates success from failure.
So at its core, this is a story about the humble, time-honored art of making pickles. A craft that takes patience, care, and just the right mix of ingredients.
But here's the thing. The most important ingredient we're going to talk about isn't a spice you can buy at the store. It's something invisible, something inside you that completely changes the final outcome.
So how is that possible? How can the exact same craft lead one person to complete failure and another to a fortune? Well, we're going to look at two very different stories to find the answer. Let's kick things off with a journey that ends in, well, chaos.
Okay, our first story starts with a woman named Shraddha. After visiting her sister-in-law, Navya, who runs a really successful pickle business, Shraddha doesn't feel inspired. No, she gets completely consumed by envy.
Her motivation wasn't a love for cooking or a genuine desire to build something. Nope. It was pure, simple rivalry. She just wanted to one-up her sister-in-law, to prove a point that was fueled by nothing but spite.
And you can see this whole mindset in her process, right? Every single step is an impatient, poorly planned shortcut. She impulsively buys huge amounts of ingredients. She literally tries to fight the weather, and when that fails, she resorts to crazier and crazier ideas. A hairdryer? Come on.
And the result? Well, it was inevitable. Her entire batch of pickles was completely ruined, totally shriveled up because the room heater just sucked all the oil out. She wasted time, she wasted money, and she threw her entire house into chaos. The key point is, her foundation, her reason for starting was flawed from the very beginning. All right, now let's completely flip the script and contrast that with our second story. We're talking about the same craft, but you're about to see a totally different outcome. This time we meet a mother-in-law, Amrita, and her daughter-in-law, Ankita.
You see, for this family, making pickles wasn't just a hobby. It was their history. It was literally how a mother raised her son all by herself. This was never about pride or competition. It was about survival.
So when Ankita joins the family, she gets how deeply important this skill is. Now, she's not a natural cook, but she is so determined. She dedicates herself to mastering it, practicing over and over, batch after batch, until she absolutely perfects it.
And this is where that skill, honed through pure dedication and purpose, becomes a total lifeline. When disaster strikes and they hit rock bottom, it isn't some cheap shortcut that saves them. It's an innovation, born from desperation and deep-seated skill, that turns the very last of their food into a brand new, successful product.
So, let's step back. We have two women, both making pickles, but with results that are worlds apart. What was the real difference here?
When you put them side by side like this, the contrast is it's stark. It couldn't be clearer. For Shraddha, the motivation was negative, envy, and it led to an impatient process and failure. For Ankita, the motivation was positive, love and survival, and that led to perseverance, innovation, and ultimately, success. You see, it was never about the pickle itself.
And this brings us right to the core takeaway from these two powerful stories. It's that secret ingredient we mentioned at the very beginning.
The pickle, the paratha, look, those were just the vehicles. Shraddha's engine was envy, a weak fuel that caused her to stall and break down. Ankita's engine, though, was survival and love for her family, and that is a powerful, resilient engine that allowed her to navigate any obstacle and find a whole new way forward.
So, here are the key lessons we can really pull from comparing these two paths. When your why is weak, your how becomes careless. But when your why is strong, you find the resilience to master the how and even invent a new one when you have to.
And in the end, this is really what it's all about. The true legacy here wasn't a recipe for pickles, it was a recipe for strength, for resilience, and for character, passed from one generation to the next. So, it's worth asking ourselves, right? In our work, our projects, our lives, what's the fundamental motivation driving our efforts? What's our secret ingredient? Because as this story shows, that one thing will ultimately determine everything we create.